Hi everyone, welcome to the third of 4 History Jacksonville specials broadcasting through the summer of 2021. I'm George Farrar. Since 2012, I've told the stories of Jacksonville's amazing history. Today, I'm pleased to bring you some more. Our show today looks at 3 big landmarks. The Jacksonville Veterans Memorial Coliseum, opened in 1960, was demolished in 2003, and was replaced by what is currently called the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. This represented a commitment that the city had in the 1960s to really do some big things on a very big scale. The Civic Auditorium was opened in 1962 and was remodeled and branded the Times Union Center for the Performing Arts and is a vibrant place of culture to this day. The Thunderbird Motor Hotel, Lounge, and Conference Center, a big hot spot for decades, was located across the river from downtown in what was at one time the booming new suburb of Arlington off of the Arlington Expressway. It opened in the 1950s and by 2021 was long abandoned. These were places of entertainment, spectacle, and varying degrees of culture. The Coliseum and the Civic Auditorium were the biggest places of my childhood, and just in talking about them with you, I'm going to have some interesting recollections. We see here an amazing photograph from inside the Coliseum, taken by legendary photographer Lloyd Sandgren. It's my favorite because it brings back so many memories of my visits there. It reminds me of a concert in around 1982 at the Greater Jacksonville Agricultural Fair with my mother and her friends. It was late, and I remember the drummer in the band throwing his drumsticks in the air, and then they played an encore. Whenever I visited the Coliseum, I would marvel at the overlooking room at the top of the interior in the center, and I dreamed of one day being able to climb up there and look down. It never happened. In our show, I'll be focusing on the prime early years of these places as well as my personal experiences. The Coliseum was a catch-all. It could do it all practically, from wrestling matches to circuses to basketball games to concerts to high school graduations. So many artists and athletes performed there. The list is endless. Here are just several. Jimi Hendrix opened for the Monkees in 1967. The Four Tops performed. So you had people that would come and give big concerts, and people would drive from all around to come to the Coliseum to see it. Artist Gilmore played on the Jacksonville University Dolphins basketball team and led them to be able to be in the national championship game in 1970. Here we see, I believe this is a picture of him performing inside the Coliseum. So the Coliseum had basketball games and all sorts of different athletic competitions. And of course, as the years went on, there were more and more concerts. And on May 7th, 1973, Led Zeppelin performed. Now, there was what was alleged to be kind of a ruckus, a tussle or so. The Jacksonville Journal, the afternoon newspaper that was around at the time, they actually closed down in 1988. The Jacksonville Journal made a big deal about it, but numerous sources that I've talked to, including a city official at the time who witnessed it, have communicated with me that there was not a packed situation, but the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was rough with people on the floor. As I researched for the show, I kept coming upon numerous accounts of run-ins between the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and spectators at these downtown venues, some who may have been intoxicated a bit heavily before and even during the performance. But generally, the crowds were cool, but heat was brought to bear possibly inappropriately at times. It's always important to remember that especially at the Coliseum, there were lots of people from all over around the city and even around the North Florida region and elsewhere, all in the round in the Coliseum. By the mid-1970s, Elvis Presley was dropping in for a couple performances. I think probably he was the biggest star of his time to ever perform in the Jacksonville Coliseum. And here we go inside the Coliseum in the 1970s to see one of his concerts. And we get an excellent vantage point, showing the seats behind the stage and seeing the stage. Everything about the Coliseum was 360 degrees except for the acoustics. I remember after my high school graduation in 1993, walking around the circular lobby that surrounded the auditorium, trying to find scattered family and friends. I must have circled the Coliseum 100 times that day. Even though while it looked neat on the outside, with some renovation, which it later got in the 1990s, even in 93, I knew that the Coliseum was incredibly dated, but it was so cool. I will say it right here and now. I think the Coliseum was the coolest place in Jacksonville growing up back in the 1980s and early 90s. Here we see another favorite picture of mine showing the Coliseum in the 1980s, how I remember it. And you can see even in the distance the Gator Bowl, the old Gator Bowl in the distance. Here is just a short list of big events I experienced there back in the day. The Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, otherwise known as the greatest show on earth. The Shriners Circus, a concert at the Greater Jacksonville Agricultural Fair. The Walt Disney Ice Capades and other Walt Disney shows and other large-scale arena performances. A hockey game with the Philadelphia Flyers in the early 1990s. And, of course, how can I forget my high school graduation? Forest High School, class of 1993. The Coliseum was one of those places I thought would be around forever, or would just be upgraded. But before it was demolished, it became readily apparent that a more state-of-the-art facility was needed. So we take one last look inside. So it was time for the Coliseum to go. And so one day, in 2003, it went. But not the memories of all the people who had so much fun and excitement inside. But the memories last. My first memory of the Civic Auditorium was a spectacular one. It was in the early 1980s. I was around 5 or 6. A relative was performing there in a show. I saw her backstage before and then saw her on the stage. I was thrilled. From then on, I enjoyed my trips out to the grand places of Jacksonville. The Civic Auditorium opened in 1962 as part of the urban renewal as the downtown riverfront around Bay Street had moved away from being a ship-filled harbor with a lot of docks and dock workers and boats and ships and became dominated by a new city hall, at least new at the time in the 1960s. A new city hall, a new county courthouse, the Atlantic Coastline Railroad Building, now CSX, and a brand new Civic Auditorium. For events like performances of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, the Florida Ballet, and Broadway show hits on tour, I would enjoy high culture there, and would of course be on my best behavior. As with the Coliseum, people complained about the acoustics, but it even had an exhibition hall and a little theater, large lobbies and windows. I told my father back in the early 1990s that I thought it was utilitarian. As I got older, I overlooked some of my early impressions and think that for its time, it was quite a riverfront accomplishment. It stands together, renovated as a Times Union Center for the Performing Arts. An incredibly lasting memory from my youth was seeing the Thunderbird sign at night from the family car, a 1981 Ford Thunderbird or my dad's Buick as we went down the Arlington Expressway to go downtown. We might be going to the Hayden Burns Library, a bookstore downtown, or elsewhere. I'll never forget the Arlington of those days. Something big happened in the 1950s and 60s. Arlington became a fast-growing suburb, fueled by the 1953 opening of the Matthews Bridge and the 1967 opening of the Regency Square Mall. Amidst all of it was the Thunderbird Motor Hotel Lounge and Conference Center, which opened in the late 1950s. It was a vast restaurant, lounge, club, conference center, resort, playground of sorts for people that what a night on the town without the drive into downtown. Dress up for dinner and a show. I've read thrilling accounts of people during these times living the dream, seeing performances and partying in the lounges around the resort. It was a heyday of Arlington. And here we have a postcard with the text on the reverse side for the Thunderbird, Actionville and Jacksonville. Complete convention facilities, theater showrooms, lavish productions and star-name entertainment, gourmet dining room and swingers lounge, coffee shop, little pub, 300 rooms, luxurious Playboy suites, 2 pools, color TV, location. This aristocrat of motor hotels is close to everything and offers the ultimate in service and accommodations. And you can see here, if you wanted to make reservations, you would pick up the phone, dial a phone number, speak with somebody, or you would write them a letter in the mail, or maybe you could get a travel agent to work it out. These were different times back then. In the 1960s, society was rapidly changing. By the 1970s, while there were still dinners and lounge acts, occupancy and attendance was dropping. With more and more available at home on cable TV, Laserdisc, and later videotapes and theaters and other entertainment options all over the area, the hotel, resort, conference, and entertainment complex couldn't compete and went into decline. By the time my father had moved the family out of Arlington to Mandarin, the suburb of Arlington was just 5 years away from starting its own decline, as more people chose to live in East Arlington or elsewhere. The hotel rebranded as a Ramada and a Quality Inn. By the turning of the 21st century, it was done even as a hotel. And here we are now. The complex is abandoned and faces an uncertain future. So there you have it. 3 entertainment meccas of Jacksonville. I hope you enjoyed this special and that you'll join me later this summer for the final History Jacksonville special. Meanwhile, I invite you to check out some of the 85 episodes of the History Jacksonville show, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and join us on Facebook groups at History Jacksonville. All of my shows are at theleftturnetwork.com. I thank you for watching. As always, the best is yet to come. Take it easy, and see you later.